Okay, so welcome to another deep dive. Today we're diving into PROUT,
PROUT.
which stands for Progressive Utilization Theory.
Ah, yes.
And I got to say, this isn't just like some passing self-help fad or anything like that.
No, not at all.
The excerpts that we're looking at today suggest that it's a whole...
It's a whole philosophy.
Yeah, it's like a socio-economic-cultural philosophy, which aims to basically perfect humanity, you know?
That's a big goal.
It's a big goal.
It is.
And it all comes from the mind of Shrii Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, who's also known as Shrii Shrii Anandamurti. And it's
quite a mouthful.
It is quite a mouthful, but I'm really curious to see if PROUT can actually deliver on this promise of, creating this balanced and fulfilling life, because that's what it claims to do.
Well, I mean, it's certainly an intriguing idea.
It is.
And the core concept is, as you said, this journey from imperfection to perfection.
Right.
But it emphasizes that the real progress actually happens not in the material world, that we're so used to.
Oh, interesting.
But in the spiritual realm.
Okay, so it's not about getting the big house and the fancy car.
Not necessarily, no.
So we're talking about like inner evolution, right?
Exactly, yeah. It's more about developing your full potential as a human being.
I see.
Intellectually, emotionally, even spiritually.
Right, okay.
It's about finding balance and purpose beyond just like accumulating possessions and wealth.
I mean, it's funny because you brought up the word balance. Because the source material really emphasizes this holistic approach.
Yes.
And it talks about how interconnected our economic well-being is with our social structures, our thoughts, even our spiritual practices.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about money.
No, it's not just about money at all.
So why is this holistic approach so crucial to the whole PROUT philosophy?
Well, I think PROUT recognizes that we're complex beings.
Yeah.
Right? Our economic systems are just one part of this bigger picture. Our beliefs, our social interactions, even our inner world, they all influence each other.
Right.
So if we really want to create a just and prosperous society, a good society, we need to consider all these aspects of life and find that balance.
And speaking of things that are crucial, the source material really stresses the importance of fulfilling those basic needs.
Absolutely.
Food, shelter, healthcare, education, all that. It basically says that those are prerequisites for any intellectual or spiritual growth.
Right.
Is that just a practical consideration, or is there a deeper philosophical reason behind that?
I think it's both on a practical level. I mean, if you're constantly struggling to survive, if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, it's really hard to focus on personal growth.
Of course, yeah.
Or higher ideals.
Yeah.
But PROUT also sees meeting these needs as a fundamental, right? It's not something that you have to earn or be given as charity.
Everyone deserves like a solid foundation to build their life on.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that really jumped out at me when I was reading this was this concept of economic democracy.
Yeah, it's a big idea.
It is.
It is.
And, I mean, it sounds fantastic in theory, but how would that actually work in the real world? Like, what would that look like?
Well, imagine a world where workers actually have more control over their workplaces.
Okay.
Think worker cooperatives, for example, where the employees themselves sound and manage the company together.
Wow.
They share the profits. They're involved in the decision-making.
Interesting.
Or community-owned businesses that are accountable to the local people.
Right.
Not to, some distant corporate board.
So it's about, like, shifting the power away from these massive corporations and governments.
Exactly.
Back to local communities?
Yeah.
That sounds really, challenging to pull off.
It's definitely a shift.
Are there any real-world examples of this actually working?
There are, actually. Okay. There's a notable example, the Mondragon Corporation in Spain. It's a network of worker cooperatives, and it's been successful for decades.
Wow.
They produce everything from groceries to industrial machinery.
Really?
Yeah, and they've shown that this more democratic and equitable model can actually be sustainable.
That's incredible.
It's not without its challenges.
Oh, of course.
But it's proof that this isn't just some utopian dream.
The Mondragon Corporation. I'm going to have to look into that.
Yeah, it's worth checking out.
So, okay, we've got more local control, more worker ownership.
Yeah.
And I see how that ties into this idea of a decentralized economic model,
right?
Which the source material mentions as well. But, wouldn't that be incredibly difficult to manage on a large scale?
It would require a shift in thinking, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of relying on these massive global supply chains, imagine, your town sourcing most of its food from local farms, reducing reliance on those big corporations.
Less of a carbon footprint?
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Local communities could manage their own resources, make decisions that benefit their specific needs.
Okay, I see what you're getting at, but I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine a world where everyone suddenly just goes local.
It would be a big shift.
Right, and wouldn't there be pushback from, all the people who benefit from the way things are now?
Well, that's certainly a valid point.
Yeah.
Changing to this kind of model would require overcoming a lot of, deeply ingrained habits and power structures.
Right.
But the source material argues that it's essential for both environmental sustainability and genuine economic empowerment.
Okay, so to recap, we've got this idea of inner progress, meeting everyone's basic needs, and restructuring our economy to be more democratic and decentralized.
Right.
And all of that is supposed to lead to a more balanced life.
Well, that's where the idea of a balanced economy comes in.
Okay.
PROUT suggests that we've become way too reliant on industry.
Okay.
At the expense of agriculture. This overemphasis on industrial production leads to, environmental problems, social inequalities.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But on the flip side, neglecting agriculture leads to food insecurity.
Right.
It weakens rural communities.
So are you suggesting that we all need to, trade in our laptops for pitchforks and become farmers?
No, not necessarily. It's about finding the right balance.
Okay.
PROUT envisions an economy where both agriculture and industry are valued and supported.
I see.
Where rural and urban areas are interconnected and interdependent.
Okay, so to sum it all up, PROUT is about this holistic development, addressing all aspects of life, guaranteeing basic needs, giving people more control over their economic lives, and finding that sweet spot between agriculture and industry.
Right.
It's pretty comprehensive.
That's a broad vision.
It is.
Yeah.
But if this were to become a reality, how do you think it would change your own life?
That's a really great question.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that each listener needs to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to embrace a simpler, more localized lifestyle? Would you be willing to, work in a worker cooperative?
Right.
It's a thought-provoking challenge that PROUT presents.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking.
It does.
Well, that's our deep dive into PROUT for today. The complex and challenging philosophy.
It is.
But it offers this vision of a world where everyone's needs are met and nobody feels like their life was wasted.
A world worth striving for.
Definitely. Keep exploring, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.